So tired from yesterday. We had a nice reception, and it was an opportunity to start getting to know each other. And I would like to welcome our panelists today. We are starting with a session from the European region of the United Nations, and they are going to provide us some examples and some interesting experiences in relation to how to implement the Sustainable Development Goals for water in the European Union, and well, in the pan-European region. I would like to give the floor to our chair so that she can start with this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josefina. Good morning. Buenos dias. We are very happy to have you here in the morning, although it's very early, but we are looking forward to interesting presentations and to interesting discussions. My name is Natalia Nikiforova. I work for the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, particularly for the Secretariat of the Water Convention. And I'm here accompanied today by our distinguished panelists, who I will be introducing to you later. Just to start with a very brief overview of the session. Since it's a morning session and today we are talking about sustainable development goals, I thought it would be useful to give a little bit of an overview of the process of shaping the post-2015 development agenda, and to discuss a little bit about the means of implementation and the possible tools to implement the water-related sustainable development goals. So this process of shaping the post-2015 development agenda has started not so long ago. It was in 2012, and it's really impressive the progress that has been made in this 2.5 years. It was also an unprecedented process because people from all over the world and representatives of all sectors could be involved in the negotiations. So there were different streams for global consultations of young people or of interested people who could contribute to the discussions through web-based platforms, and also different conferences that were organized. There were also different high-level panels of eminent persons and on sustainable development, who also contributed to the process, but also academia, business, through the UN Global Compact. The regional commissions, including the UNEC, provided their inputs too. And there were many other inputs who all fed this process. Most importantly, there was also the Open Working Group on Sustainable Development of the General Assembly of the United Nations, who were deliberating and shaping a set of sustainable development goals. And finally, just recently, they presented 17 goals with 169 related targets, and now they're in process of developing the indicators. We are very happy also as water people to know that this time there is a dedicated water goal, which is goal number 6, which is to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. But of course, water is a cross-cutting issue, so many other sustainable development goals also contribute to the water goal, and we shouldn't forget about it. However, it is important in future deliberations that this water goal stays, and that there is a dedicated water goal, including all aspects of the water cycle and including transboundary aspects. So that is what we are also working on at the UNEC and with many of our partners. Just in order to frame better this agenda and not to have 17 goals which are difficult to remember and difficult to deliver and to communicate, the General Assembly and also the Secretary General in their synthesis report came up with a set of 6 elements which will be the essential elements for delivering the Sustainable Development Goals, and they will be communicated in this way to the country level. So it's about dignity, prosperity, justice, partnership, planet, and people. So we have to think about these dimensions when we think about the whole set of the SDGs. What is the way forward? This year is really the crucial year, and we are in the beginning of this year, so it's important to realize that this year is really a year for global action. The proposal that was adopted by the General Assembly and also supported by the Secretary General of the United Nations, as I said, includes 17 goals, and we hope that they will all stay there. But this agenda can still be shaped, it can be shifted, can be combined. So the deliberations are really starting now, and it is very important until September this year how the member states will influence this process. There will be 3 major events this year. One will be about financing for sustainable development, so discussing the really means of implementation in July in Addis Ababa. There will be another event of the General Assembly where the set of SDGs will be adopted, and the year will end with a conference of the United Nations Framework Convention for the Climate Change in December. Of course, it is good to adopt already a set of SDGs, but it's also important to focus on their implementation and to mobilize means for implementation. And I think this is really the focus of this conference here today and in the coming days. So we will be discussing the legal frameworks, the financing, capacity building, and the technology which we need to really successfully implement the SDGs. We also have to think about data collection and access to data, and monitoring, evaluation, and reporting in terms of SDGs. And we have to also make sure that the monitoring systems are simple and we don't overburden the member states, and we don't discourage them in this way from implementing the SDGs. In UNEC region, of course, we welcome the Sustainable Development Goals, and we hope that they will further contribute to the progress that we are making in the UNEC region. And as you said, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, it is one of the regional commissions of the United Nations, and it is a commission for Europe. But what is really Europe? Europe is not only European Union. It includes Central Asia and all post-Soviet states. So of course, the level of development really varies in the region. And also the UNEC region particularly includes US, USA, Canada, and Israel. So as you can see, it's a very wide region, and we all exchange experience and work together. So it's not only about European Union. Also, unfortunately, Europe has not been such a peaceful continent, and we know that there have been major conflicts, and even now, like, there are tensions in the region. It is also not a water-free problem continent, so almost half of the population lives in water-stressed areas, and with the climate change-related extreme weather events will also increase. So we also face many challenges like all the other regions of the world. And in terms of economic development, it is also sometimes shocking to see that the GDP of some countries in the region can be compared to GDP of other countries in Africa. For example, like the poorest country of the European region, which is Tajikistan, the GDP can be lower than many of the African countries, and it's also the GDP is 100 times less than the richest country, which is Luxembourg. So it's really a region where we also need a lot of progress still to make. In terms of challenges, I also think they're no different from the challenges faced by the world in general. So it's population growth, competing users, uneven economic development, as I already said, disparities in access to basic services, lack of capacity at national level, collecting and monitoring data is also a challenge, and having a harmonized set of data has been a challenge as well. And of course, we will be more and more facing disaster risks and conflicts over water resources. There are also some good tools, and these are the ones that will be presented partly by my colleagues. So I think the most important is to have a very solid institutional and legal cooperation frameworks. The Nexus approach has been also very promising in solving these challenges in an integrated manner. Integrated water resources management, which is not a new concept, but still a lot has to be done to implement it in the region. And also this link between environment and human rights has been very important. And for example, the human right to water and sanitation was very helpful in promoting access to water and sanitation for all. And of course, as I said, for the implementation of SDGs, particularly, we would need harmonized systems for reporting and for monitoring of SDGs. And some platforms already existing at the UNEC level hopefully will be helpful in this regard. So I don't want to. I would prefer to give floor to our panelists, who are really experts in many of these fields. And we will start with Minna Hanski, who is a ministerial advisor in the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry of Finland. And she's also an expert on bilateral cooperation, particularly the Finnish-Russian Commission. So Minna will talk a little bit about the UNEC Water Convention and how the convention and the Finnish-Russian Commission have influenced each other. And we have to keep in mind that this Finnish-Russian Commission, it's more than 50 years, so it's really, there is a lot of experience there. Thank you very much, and I hope that we will have lots of questions to our participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I can. This UNEC Water Convention, so the Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Watercourses and International Lakes, came in force in 1996. So we have 20 years of experience in its application. And almost all countries sharing transboundary waters on UNEC region have ratified it. And the convention is also complemented by two protocols. Protocol on water and health is very important if we think about sustainable development goals. So it should be noticed that it was the first international agreement focusing on adequate supply of safe drinking water and adequate sanitation for everyone. Water Convention is based on principle of international water law. It is focused on prevention of adverse transboundary impacts such as flooding and pollution. The Water Convention supports countries in concluding agreements on shared waters, and I think very many concrete results has already been achieved. Water Convention works also in politically difficult regions and basins. Quite early, parties of the convention realized that there would be many advantages to cooperate also in the wider area. So in 2003, an amendment was made to make this convention a global instrument. And 3 ratifications are still missing, but quite soon all UN member states can become members of the convention. Another important convention is United Nations Watercourses Convention, Convention on the Law of the Non-Navigational Uses of International Watercourses. And this convention entered into force in 2014, in last August. And it is based on the same principle as this UNEC Water Convention, but it is much more focused on fair and reasonable use of shared water resources. And it is important to notice that they are compatible and there is no contradiction between these two conventions, and they complement each other. And there is also a very high political support for implementing these instruments. They are seen instruments for water diplomacy, for conflict prevention, and United Nations Secretary General Mr. Ban Ki-moon in 2012 encourages countries outside the UNEC region to join the UNEC convention, and also stated that these two conventions, their implementations should go hand in hand with each other, and they should be implemented in a coherent manner. And at the moment, there is 14 parties in this UNECE conventions, but like I said, this globalization brings new opportunities, and soon we will have a global community to deal with water issues. But what does it mean in practice? Finnish-Russian transboundary water cooperation is one of the models which led to the UNECE Water Convention. We have, like Natalia said, more than 50 years of cooperation. The agreement was signed in 1964. And we have 19 common river basins between Finland and Russia. Because this conference is focused on practical tools, today I will give you a small introduction how we make integrated water resources management in this area. And the area I'm talking about is River Vuoksi, Lake Saimaa river system, and in the left hand you can see the area in Finnish side. There is a huge lake areas there, and downstream is this River Vuoksi, which flows from Finland to Russia. There are 4 hydropower plants in this river. 2 of them are in Finnish side and 2 of them are in Russian side. And because there is no reservoirs above all hydropower plants, it's of course crucial that this information exchange on discharges is exchanged all the time. So these hydropower plants have a very long history of cooperation. But besides hydropower, we also have a lot of other interests in this area, and this is why we had to get some kind of instrument for this integrated thinking and integrated management of this discharges in this river. And in 1991 was implemented this Lake Saimaa River Vuoksi discharge rule, and it's quite important instrument for us still. It combines the natural state of the watershed with regulation, and this natural state of this lake area was very important for Finland because we didn't want to have a regulated area in this lake area. And in normal situation, if we are in this normal zone, which is 50 centimeters above or below mean water level, the discharges from Lake Saimaa correspond to natural flows. But if there is a threat of flooding or drought period, so the forecast predict that the water level will rise above or go below this normal zone, then we start regulation. And then afterwards, when the normal situation is coming again, then we will go back to this normal situation which correspond to natural flows. And afterwards we calculate all the losses, all the benefits, and if it's necessary, we compensate the possible losses. This is an example of equitable and reasonable use of transboundary waters. Main aim of this discharge rule is to minimize adverse consequences in the river system as a whole. We take into account the hydropower, but we also take into account flood risk and drought risk in this area. In drought periods, for example, the water traffic and water supply are important. But we also take into account the environment, especially in Finland. In this Lake Saimaa area, there lives endangered species called Saimaa seal, and especially in wintertime, its habitats are really important to take into account. This rule is also important for us in the future because we are expecting to have much more this kind of exceptional water situations, and now we have common rules how we can handle this kind of situation and what we are going to do if the flood or drought is going to be there. As a conclusion, some ideas for implementation of the future Sustainable Development Goals. I think these two water conventions are really important instruments for water diplomacy and conflict prevention. And I also hope that this transboundary cooperation will be part of the future Sustainable Development Goals. It is, of course, challenge in many basins to get both upstream and downstream countries convinced that they both can be winners if they sign agreements with their neighbors. But I think these benefits of cooperation can rise above national, often short-term interests. And I think this managing transboundary water resources integrated and sustainable manner is the key element to cope with future challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mina. And if someone from the audience has questions, you're welcome to ask them now. If not, I'm quite interested actually in one question, because I'm also Russian. So how was it for you? Was it easy to reach an agreement on the discharge rule? And in general, when you need to reach a consensus on an issue, how do you find the way to reach it? How is it? Is it easy or difficult for you?
Making the discharge rule was really not an easy process. It took almost 20 years. The initiative was made in 1973 and it was implemented in 1991. So there was a lot of planning, a lot of assessments, etc., and of course counter-arguments in both countries. But I think this is important for all of you to notice that these processes can not always be so easy. But I think one factor for success was this stakeholder involvement and then, of course, also this wide assessment of impacts. In Finnish-Russian cooperation, we work in many different levels. Of course, we have this commission, but it has only once a year meetings. But we have also regular working groups, and they meet also and organize workshops, etc. But of course, also a research institute has cooperation, regional authorities have cooperation, and those hydropower companies have cooperation. So in many different levels, in many different subjects, we work together. And according to the agreement, there is a possibility that if the Commission cannot reach consensus in some issue, it can submit the matter to the government. But during these 50 years of cooperation, this has not happened even once.
Oh, thank you. It's interesting. And do you also use international forums as a way to maybe discuss some issues or reach an agreement, like, for example, UNEC Water Convention? The fact that both Russia and Finland are parties to the convention, does it help in your cooperation?
I think it really helps, and of course those principles are the same in conventions and in our agreement. That is important, that we really trust and we have a common opinion on issues. But I also think that this UNEC framework gives us very many ideas, and especially in the future when we have a global community, it's very nice to get best practices and get ideas also from other countries, how we tackle, for example, climate change adaptation or this nexus concept, etc.
Okay, thank you very much, Mina. If there are no questions from the audience at this point, we will still have time in the end of our session. And if not, then I would give the floor to Luis Simas, who will present the regional platforms, which are the European Union directives and the Protocol on Water and Health to the UNEC Water Convention. Luis represents ERSAR, so Independent Water Regulator in Portugal.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Gracias, Natalia. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation to do this presentation. And also thank you, because you helped me a lot on some of the slides, especially on the protocol on water and health. I'm here to talk about reporting systems and the Sustainable Development Goals. And reporting is something that most of us don't like too much. But I would like to, as a personal experience, to show you how important reporting systems can be and how important they can be to help us to make decisions in the future. Okay, those are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, we are going to focus our attention on number 6, which talks about water and sanitation. And of course, now we know that water and sanitation, they are human rights. But the question is that one, why such big difference in the world? Why something that seems so easy to achieve in some countries, in other countries the things are so different? Why we have so very easy solutions? We know how to solve the problems, and in some countries the problems they maintain the best. I think it's the right one for going in detail. But we have a reporting system and a monitoring system that tries to assess the quality of the water bodies and to maintain the good quality of the water bodies, as you can imagine, is essential to have a good environment, to have a good human protection health, and also to have a very good drinking tap water, as we have here today in the table. And then the Water Framework Directive, that is concentrated on the water bodies. We have the Drinking Water Directive concentrated on the tap water, and also the Drinking Water Directive as a reporting system. It is mandatory for European Union countries. You can see just some documents that you can find in the web about the reporting system. And this information, it is information that you can use in the future to make decisions. And then if you go to the UNEC, you have one tool, which is the Protocol on Water and Health, that is a more broad instrument. This instrument, as you can see, it's probably the only one, or at least the most important one, legal treaty that relates water and health, which is very, very important. Water as an holistic approach, not only drinking water, but water as we use it from source to tap, and afterwards. And of course, it promotes a political commitment of countries to achieve a certain level of efficiency, a certain level of quality, a certain level of protection of environment and human health. Of course, it is very related with the Sustainable Development Goals, because it also has as key objects the access to drinking water for everyone and the provision of sanitation for everyone. As you can see, it's more or less the same as the human rights to safe water and safe sanitation. And with an instrument like this one, and with the right targets, with the right goals, and with the right monitoring and reporting, you can assess your evolution through the years. If we go on detail, and we see what are the evolutions under the reporting under the Protocol on Water and Health, we have to do a 3-year report. This 3-year report, as you can see, we already have 2 cycles of it. The 3rd cycle will start this year, 2015. But there are some difficulties on achieving a good level of reporting and a good level of assessment of the progress done by the countries. The objectives of the reporting, as I have been saying, is to assess the progress, not really to compare the evolution between countries. It's not a competition. It's just a tool for the countries to understand how their solutions, how their progress is achieved through the time. It is also, and I would like to focus on this, it is also a very good forum for sharing experience and sharing knowledge. And I think this is the most important, because it's not a competition, because it's not going to show who is in first place, second place, and third place. It's somewhere where you can freely share your problems, share your knowledge, share your solutions, share your successes, and share your failures. Natalia spoke in the beginning about the reporting systems. They should be easy, and they should really be connected to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that's one of the biggest challenge in the future for the Protocol on Water and Health, is to connect to the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, probably we have to do some revision. One of the things that is very interesting, sometimes countries are very good on monitoring parameters, but they are not so good on understanding what are the results of those monitoring results and what they have to do with that, because data is information, and the big difficulty is to read the information that data can give to you. So that's how the reporting systems can help us. I'd like to take some time, if I have, just to show you a little bit of the Portuguese experience. And in this slide, you can see that in the last 10, 15 years, we have doing an evolution on the wash sector based on national strategic plans that you can see there. We are on the 4th generation now, the 2014-2020. And of course, because it's a national strategic plan, as a monitoring, as a reporting system that must be connected with the global goals. And some of the results you can see here.
What requires more capacities and policies needs to be improved in order to reduce the past dependency which these countries have. And also new challenges arriving within this context is like a climate change, about which I would like to give you more information. All in all, I think Central Asian environment has huge anthropogenic pressure, which is have consequences for quality and quantities of the resources, diversity and functions of environment. It has also the reduction may reduce the river flows due to climate change, high water energy demand. It may be increasing the demands for water and energy. And also degraded natural biodiversity is also one of the problems Central Asia may face or facing already seriously. All in all, this reduced economic, the reduced ecosystem services brings the social and economic losses. And the region faces daily that due to reduced ecosystem services, we have less job available, less food available, less access to clean water and environment. But also we have to be prepared in this sub-region for the new challenges, such as, as I told you, the climate change. Central Asia, especially on water, will be affected seriously by reduction of the river flows about 25-30%. It's huge amount of water, which may bring new problems in the water management. Moreover, it will also reduce environmental resilience, means less biodiversity. All in all, this requires that stronger institutional capacities are needed in Central Asia. It also requires we have to build stronger social resilience in this region. Moreover, we need priority from the beginning when they got their independence after the Soviet Union. The Regional Palace Commission, most of you may heard and know, are also working, and also environmental experts are cooperating with each other. Lately, with support from international community, there are also regional working groups are set up, like regional working group on water quality, where CAREG and UNEC had actively promoted regional cooperation and regional standards. This could be one example which can be applied also in case of sustainable development goals, implementation and monitoring. Lately also the shared environmental information systems are widely used and started to be accepted concept. Ecosystem evaluation could be also one area where these regional working groups also promoting the cooperation. I would say also there are regional processes led by these regional institutions like RLC basin programs, at least 3 basin programs already in place and implemented in different level of success, but it shows that countries of regions countries could put priorities together and underline the regional cooperation modes. Of course, its implementation and success could be assessed in different levels, but it's the good mechanism which can bring the Central Asian countries together. Regional environmental goals has been also formulated with establishment of CAREC and implemented during the last 10 years. It could be also other good instrument and process which could be promoted. All regional organizations which I mentioned has a policy formulation functions, means regional policies could be formulated, including sustainable development goals. Moreover, they also are making efforts on information and awareness building in different success, but all of them almost doing it. And they have also skills and tools for monitoring and assessment of the results of the regional initiatives. In case of international initiatives like Sustainable Development Goals, these regional institutions has capacities, monitoring tools, and other means to implement it. And moreover, all these 4 regional organizations has also project implementation skills, which could be used, also applied for case of Sustainable Development Goals. If we look at the last 2 decades of achievements of regional cooperations, I would mention first that regional organizations still have ownership. They are owned by states of the Central Asia, and most of the cases they are also funded by Central Asian countries. Of course, international support and funding is growing, but this is exactly the internal processes which have promoted this regional cooperation, but also funded. And moreover, it's internalization of these processes, means countries really are putting onto the table their own problems, sometimes tough problems, tough discussions, but still it's owned by countries. Moreover, the rotation of governance system is very important. All 4 regional organizations have equal representations of 5 countries, and chairmanship is changed, and also ownership of the countries and hosting country is changed, which is unique, which is difficult to handle, very difficult to really manage, but it is the ownership process. And of course, lastly, professionalization of this regional organization slowly improving. I would say they also help to continue regional dialogue. These regional institutions helps to continue regional dialogue processes, and it's also a platform for discussions. I would say we sometimes have information about Central Asia. There are tough discussions, water discussions, disputes, and conflicts. But I think by these regional dialogues, these conflicts always handled in peaceful manner. And I would say reduction of the conflicts, the role of the regional institutions. But I would also mention that they may also very effective short-term solutions. In case of water allocation, always at least in 6 months once seasonal allocation is handled by the regional institutions. In case of SDGs and water, it could not work because we are looking longer period and longer cooperation, but at least in short-term solutions they are very effective. At least they are regular. But if you bring the examples, I could mention that Central Asia Initiative, Water Quality Cooperation, and RLC program, which I have mentioned, could be the examples of regional cooperation. And that has a continuity. And now, for example, now we are talking about RLC Basin Programs 3. That could be also the example that in the region you could build implementation monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals in phases and put really clear goals and implement them step by step. Now, if we look the challenges of regional cooperation in the region, which I would like to also underline, that there are, of course, a lot of problems with regional cooperation. Most of the regional organizations are based on national priorities, and sometimes we just bring to the regional level very small issues, not the issues which are the priorities. And of course, it's also dislinked from global development, and rarely you can have information that regional organizations talk about SDGs. that could be also the intervention from us to improve it. And regional cooperation sometimes ad hoc, context-based, and conflictive, and less resultant. However, I would say we have to appreciate the ownership of the process by the regional countries, and they kept this 20 years, these regional institutions, and I would say new efforts renewed by EU strategy for Central Asia, for example, have been very good support, enhancing support to regional joint activities, and they were helpful to strengthening regional cooperation and also coordination of EU with regional efforts. I would say that's also one of the kickstart for the regional cooperation. I would say also there are a few other more initiatives which could support regional cooperation and strengthen and address these weaknesses which I have underlined. That could be New Silk Road initiative, it could be Berlin process which is related with water, and also regional organizations themselves are making some efforts. I would mention last Urgench conference will improve because the economy and security of the region will drive this cooperation. There is no way, it's common challenge, it will be also a gain for all countries. And I would say that also consolidation will happen in regional institutions, like they will consolidate processes and cooperation modes improved, and information system will be improved. But there is also danger that there may be some disintegration, reduced cooperation. There is alternative scenario that no or few regional initiatives will go on. But if today we come back to our more of subject of today's conference is SDGs, and I would say on SDGs, before we shift to the SDGs, we looked at MDGs, and in Millennium Development Goals, Central Asian countries have been quite successful on access to drinking water. And the latest data shows that in all countries, the access improved tremendously, in comparison with, for example, 90s. And especially the last 5 years increase is noticeable. However, we have to work on sanitation. That could be the one area in Central Asia needs more efforts. If we look at the SDGs, I think Central Asia's representation in setting post-2015 could be improved via regional institutions. Unfortunately, that passiveness is mentionable. And I would say there was only few cases where that could be mentioned that Central Asians have put together some comments on SDGs or made efforts to take care of Central Asian specificities. However, its SDGs implementation is interest for Central Asian countries because for their prosperity, security, and sustainability is key, especially regional elements, as I told, because of the transboundary nature of the resources. And successful implementation requires system of monitoring. I think we need indicators which are accepted by countries of the region. Information management and exchange of the information data is key for a successful implementation of the SDGs. What we could do at the regional level for the accountability mechanism of the SDGs, the regional level we could facilitate exchange of best practices, lessons learned, because 5 countries still very different and still has a different experience and different economic level and social level. So I think that could be good level to learning from each other, not learning from only international experience. Also, the solutions to shared challenges and transboundary issues is very important. Moreover, we need also inputs from reviews of the global level back to the regional level. What is other countries achieving and how Central Asia can gain from this? And we could also translate these global goals into policies, guidelines, and recommendations at the national level, standards. We could mobilize partnerships at the regional level. That's very important. Civil society, economic sector, business, and also state could cooperate very well with each other for SDGs implementation and monitoring. We could also build ownership and understanding. We have to really make sure that ownership is in place, because without the clear ownership, there will be no regional cooperation. So what we could also do is, or we are doing, promotion of set of indicators like SACE for monitoring of the SDGs implementation. I think that's very important. There must be the accepted indicators which can be comparable with countries. We use advanced reporting approach. We could improve the public access to the information, like Aarhus centers, their crucial role on passing the information. In this case, I would say Central Asian regional organizations could gain the methodological support, looking to the support from UNEC institutions, other UN institutions on methodological support, data and reporting requirements, application and use of SACE, and also the capacity building could be a successful element of the SDG implementation and monitoring in Central Asia. All in all, I think Central Asian regional cooperation is the key for implementation and monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Iskandar, for this very comprehensive presentation of regional initiatives in Central Asia. And indeed, having been to the region, I hope as many of you also have been there, you understand how really important it is to set up cooperation frameworks, even if the processes are long, challenging, and even getting people together at the table, it's usually a challenge. So we really congratulate Central Asia on these many initiatives that you just mentioned. And just maybe one question, because we are running out of time. You kindly presented us all the tools and how the SDGs can be implemented in Central Asia and how Central Asian regional initiatives could support implementation of SDGs. But maybe what would be the support that you would need from an international community, or what are you going to ask from these global processes in order to ensure that the countries of Central Asia are developing in a sustainable way?
Yeah, I think already partly I addressed this question in my presentation. One is support the setting up regional dialogues. I think that's really important, as you already mentioned, the bringing the different groups, regional elites, regional organizations together. Then also, I would say the changing knowledge and instruments, which other parts of the UNEC and the global community is having, because that's the breach, knowledge breach, and is very important for the region. The region is sometimes locked due to language, due to experience from the.
Thank you. Yes. Buenos dias. Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Natalia, for giving me the floor. I will talk about the work which is ongoing in the Danube River Basin, on river basin management, and also on intersectoral cooperation, how we are approaching the Nexus topic. But first, I would quickly like to start with this overview slide, World's International River Basins. It was mentioned several times already today that water is a transboundary issue. I think it is very important to mention this. Water is crossing boundaries. Almost 2/3 of the global landmass is covered by international river basins. I think it's quite logical that there's really a need for cooperation between countries to manage this key resource, this really important resource for the benefit of the people. On the other hand, it's not only about cooperation across boundaries between countries, it's also about cooperation across boundaries between different sectors. And this is very much in the heart of the whole Nexus discussion. Water is an interdisciplinary and cross-cutting issue. We have got different sectors linked with water. We have got drinking water, what we heard already today. Industries, we have got the whole navigation hydropower topic, so infrastructure development connected with it, flood risk management, agriculture and food production. And I think this is very important to be kept in mind also when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. As we all know, Goal 6 is on water. It's to ensure the availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. I think it's very important. It's really crucial to have a topic or a goal specifically on water. We've got also sub-goals related to water, so 6.1 to 6.6, which is going more into detail, for instance, on drinking water, on sanitation, on ecosystems. And the topic 6.5 is also on integrated water resource management at all levels, including through transboundary cooperation as appropriate is written there. We might discuss what as appropriate might mean in this context. Maybe some countries still have the perception that the risk to join agreements is still higher than the benefits which can be gained out of it. So maybe this is really a topic where maybe further work in the future is still needed to address this issue maybe. However, the point I want to make with this slide is that although we have a specific goal on water, a lot of other goals are connected to the goal on water. For instance, food security, goal 2, is central also, and a key element also related to the water topic. Goal 7, sustainable energy, is also very much related. Then other 17 countries in the basin, sharing the basin. Water cooperation is based on the Danube River Protection Convention from the year 1994. So there was really a window of opportunity for negotiating this agreement, the Danube River Protection Convention, after the fall of the Iron Curtain, because the Danube Basin is spanning from Central Europe to Southeastern Europe, so really across the former Iron Curtain. And in the beginning of the 90s, there was really this opportunity to bring countries together and to negotiate the agreement, which was finally agreed in 94 and came into force in 1998. And the cooperation in the basin is based on this legal framework. Contracting parties are 14 countries with a major share in the basin, plus the European Union. It's divided between 9 new member states and 5 non-EU member states. And very important to mention also, the ICPDR is the platform for countries to draft and adopt the Danube River Basin Management Plan and the Danube Flood Risk Management Plans according to the EU Water Framework Directive and the EU Floods Directive. So in practice, these are really the key tools for the practical work the Danube River Basin Commission is doing. Maybe just to very briefly outline the content of both of these directives. The Water Framework Directive is basically promoting integrated or requiring integrated water resource management on the basin-wide scale. So when you've got an international river basin, it requires cooperation between the countries. It requires assessments of all pressures and uses related to water. It requires monitoring. It requires setting up joint program of measures which are implemented. And this whole process is repeated every 6 years. So although the Water Framework Directive itself might be quite a complex tool of legislation, I think the basic principles are applicable all over the world, I think. Because it's about getting your pressures on the table, discussing your pressures, doing proper assessments, getting information what the status of the water is, and then agreeing on measures in order to improve water status and to balance the different water uses. There's an evolving management cycle. Every 6 years, this process is repeated. The first management plans were adopted for the Danube Basin in 2009. So we are currently in the end of the implementation of the first joint program of measures. And we are currently we developed a second Danube River Basin Management Plan, a draft which is currently under public consultation and which will be finalized by the end of this year. Similar approaches are in place for the Floods Directive, which came into force in 2007. And currently also we are in the process of elaborating the first Flood Risk Management Plan, which is following the same deadlines like the Water Framework Directive. Very important to mention also, basically both directives require an integrated approach with stakeholder involvement. And you might ask yourself, why stakeholder involvement, why intersectoral cooperation? I think, just name it, I think there are a lot of examples around the world where we see that water can be potentially a conflicting topic between different stakeholders, between countries. I just picked out one example from our basin from the 80s, where there was in one country a heavy discussion on the planned hydropower station, which caused a huge political dispute in the country. Finally, agreement was not to build it, but this area is now a national park. This is just one example. But we have got other examples as well in place where we see that discussing this potential conflicting topic from the very beginning in the very open process is maybe a better way to deal with it. It might be easier to take a unilateral decision for decision makers. So it might be the case that you come quicker to a decision. But we also see we've got many examples where the implementation process can be quite difficult when a lot of resistance is there. So with intersectoral cooperation, maybe the decision-making process might be challenging, the discussions might be challenging, but in the end, the implementation process can be much quicker, and in the end, you can gain really from this intersectoral cooperation and getting really a better balance with regard to different water uses. That's the theory. What are we trying to do to address this in the basin? Stakeholder representatives. We have got around 23 observer organizations, including representatives, for instance, from the navigation sector, from the hydropower sector, from the dredging associations, from researchers, WWF, Global Water Partnership, And all these stakeholders and interest groups are directly participating around the same table with the country representatives. And we really try to have an as open process as possible. So people can bring in proposals for changing text of the management plans, bring up issues, put issues on the agenda. And we really strongly believe that we gain tremendously from this very open process, because in the end the product is much better, which we are delivering. This is the general approach, how we are working. But we have seen that for specific topics, dedicated activities are very important also to be done. Because we have seen that, for instance, specifically with regard to inland navigation and with regard to hydropower, there's quite a potential for conflict also with regard to different projects in the basin. So a couple of years ago, we launched targeted activities, asking us the question, how to ensure the sustainable water protection, non-deterioration of the water bodies and nature protection sites if these infrastructure projects will be implemented, how to make a step from confrontation to reconciliation, cooperation, and maybe in some cases to create even win-win solutions, and can we guide infrastructure development that it won't conflict with existing environmental legal requirements. A first response was in 2007 when we launched a cross-sectoral dialogue with the inland navigation sector. I have to mention maybe that there's the Danube River Basin Commission in place, I'm representing, but there's another commission dealing specifically with navigation and structured approach with regard to the discussions for infrastructure projects, taking the different objectives on board from the very beginning. We've got follow-up activities ongoing. Yearly we organize meetings to keep the people involved and to also have an exchange on the progress in the implementation of this document. And this was, I would say, a very successful activity. Leading me now to hydropower, which is another potential conflicting topic. I think everybody agrees there's a clear need to increase the share of renewable energy. Specifically, when we think about climate change mitigation policies. On the other hand, it's also clear that hydropower can have negative impacts on the environment, can also in some regions have negative social impacts. And here again, based on the previous experiences with cross-sectoral cooperation, we launched an activity bringing the different actors together. This activity was based on a mandate which we received from the ministers of the Danube countries in 2010. So in 2011, we launched this process, built up a working group with the different representatives. And it was a very tough discussion, taking around 2 years. But finally, we managed to get an agreement on the guiding principles on sustainable hydropower development in the Danube Basin, which was finalized and adopted in 2013. And which was agreed by, first of all, the countries, but also NGOs, stakeholder representatives from the International Hydropower Association, European Small Hydropower Association. And currently this document is also under practical application in the basin. Just very briefly, what's the main content? It's dealing with the question how to deal with existing hydropower, but the core element is the strategic planning approach for new hydropower development. We developed different criteria for the evaluation of the appropriateness of river stretches for hydropower use. And I will not go into detail, but more details can be obtained from the document itself. I think what is important to be mentioned is what we try to communicate are the range of benefits which can be gained for the different sectors, let's say. For the energy sector, applying these guiding principles can bring the benefit to have a streamlined authorization process, an improvement of the predictability and upfront information where the authorization for new projects is likely. For the environmental sector, transparency and involvement in decision making, and also the protection of very sensitive river stretches. And for authorities, an increase of the security for legal compliance, because it's about proper implementation also of EU legislation, and getting an involvement of relevant actors in an early stage and an accelerated implementation of legislation. So really an accelerated increase of renewable energy, but also a protection of sensitive river stretches, let's put it that way. These were very targeted activities. What we are currently doing is also, and what I would like to briefly mention is also sustainable flood risk management, where we are launching now also the activities to really link flood risk management and the flood risk planning closely with river basin management. Again, we bring the different actors together to create a common understanding also on the topic. And one potential topic for the coming years, where we are discussing now whether we want to go more into detail on this, is also sustainable agriculture. I'm coming now to my nearly final slide. because I think it's important also when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals that we think about river basins and the connection also to the marine environment. I think there's a very close connection. In Europe, currently, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive is under implementation, also including elements where the marine ecosystem needs to be linked also with river basin management activities, because a lot of pollution is coming from river basins. We have got migratory fish species also, which are living both in the freshwater systems but also in the seas. So it's very important to link these two activities again. I put here an example for the Black Sea, which is the receiving sea for the Danube, actually. And you see on this picture the situation in 1979 with regard to the chlorophyll A concentrations in the northwestern shelf of the Black Sea. This is related to nutrient pollution and algae blooms. So in the meantime, in the last decades, the dead zone, which was still in place in the 70s, so the anoxygen zone in the northwestern shelf of the Black Sea, has been virtually eliminated. Oxygen levels are near saturation in the meantime in most areas. And also the number of benthic species increased significantly in the meantime. So we clearly see that a lot of progress was made, which is on one hand related to investments on urban wastewater treatment, but also economic circumstances which changed a lot during this period. But the key message is think about the river basin management also in terms of the receiving seas and try to link these activities as well. Coming now to my final slide, the conclusions. Just to mention again, 2/3 of the global land mass is covered by transboundary river basin, making water a transboundary issue. But it's also a cross-cutting issue between sectors, so the water nexus topic, requiring intersectoral cooperation. We see, based on our experience, that the establishment or like the intersectoral exchange allows for the establishment of possibilities for formal but also informal exchange, what is very important. In some of our meetings, national representatives from different sectors met themselves the first time, what was quite interesting for us to see. But this really improved also their cooperation and back at home at the national level. It really helps to create a better common understanding on the requirements and constraints also different sectors are confronted with. It allows an integration for potential conflicting objectives from the beginning, and also it allows for an acceleration of the implementation of relevant legislation. Based on this also, I think integrated transboundary river basin management is really a prerequisite for achieving different sustainable development goals. For instance, also on water supply, because it's about water quality also, the water supply topic, and sanitation, health, food, energy systems, ecosystems, marine environment, and also climate change, because water is really in the center of the whole climate change debate. So also in these terms, it's very important to get your river basin management right. Transboundary river basin management is also an important catalyst for triggering related national discussions and processes. Quite often we see that at national level, discussions are locked, and with an international debate, this allows for more room for real exchange again and for progress also in the debates at the national level. But it also requires something. It requires a legal or institutional framework for transboundary cooperation, and also to provide the required resources for running such institutions like the Danube Commission. And also, and this is really a key element, it requires political support and dedication of the relevant actors which are involved in such cooperation activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raymond. And again, we hear how advanced the Danube Basin is, and it's always a pleasure to hear how much has been done already, and how maybe other basins of the world could learn from the Danube Basin. But maybe still about cooperation, you mentioned that it's quite interesting because most of the countries are parts of the European Union, but some are not. So has this cooperation been challenging, or if not, how did you manage to get all these countries together, even if their level of economic development or political structures are very different?
Yeah, it's true. When you look at the Danube Basin, it's a very heterogeneous basin in terms of the socio-economic circumstances. We've got some of the richest countries of Europe in our basin, but also some of the poorest countries. So it's really a challenge to bridge also this socio-economic gap. I think we are in practical terms, the legal framework for cooperation is the convention, but in practical terms, the Water Framework Directive and Floods Directive are the key tools, because you have got straightforward deadlines and requirements included. It's a legal requirement for EU member states, So when they are applying the Water Framework Directive principles, at the same time they are actually fulfilling the requirements of the Convention for EU member states. For non-EU member states, it's the case that most of the countries in our basin, all of them basically, have an EU perspective. So cooperating in the frame of the ICPDR helps them to accelerate the process of coming closer to European Union accession. But not only this is a benefit for them to cooperate, also the basic principles which are applied are helpful to create benefits for them at home also. So the different benefits, and this is one reason, and the cooperation basically on the Water Framework Directive is also based on a political agreement also from non-EU member states to work on the implementation of the directive. For the a little bit socioeconomic, more challenged countries, we also try to get additional resources on board to help them actually coming to the same level like other countries which are in a far advanced state maybe are already. So we really try to bridge a little bit this gap also with the cooperation, and actually it also helps them to obtain external resources also for the activities which they're doing, for instance, from different donor organizations like World Bank, UNDP, JEF, and so on. Different projects also financed to bring them closer to standards other countries might already have.
So do I understand correctly that you also make use of global platforms and global processes to make sure that this cooperation is effective at the basin level? Like, for example, maybe the UNEC Water Convention, or as you mentioned, some projects by UNDP and World Bank, like bigger organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the history of the organization, for kicking off the cooperation, there was a lot of UN funding applied. So we had big projects which allowed to do first assessments, to establish the information exchange platform, to establish the secretariats, to get countries on board in the different expert groups. But in the meantime, we are in the lucky situation that all the countries, or actually the organization is running with the contributions from the countries itself. So we are independent from external sources. I think what is really an important progress. It's really the country's organization. They pay the contributions, and based on these contributions, the activities are ongoing. Basically, all countries, there's an agreement that all pay the same contribution, but we have got some transition phases. So countries which are more challenged with regard to their socioeconomic conditions are paying still less, but in the midterm, the objective is that the contributions are the same. We are also strongly involved in UNEC activities, for instance, because we also feel we have a commitment to give something back to the global community, because we received a lot from the global community, and therefore we really try to be involved also in different activities on the global level also as well.
Thank you. And also on this two very interesting initiatives that you had on inland navigation and hydropower, you mentioned in particular for hydropower that these guidelines were adopted in 2013. And was already, did the implementation start, and did you already have cases? For example, we know that there are some initiatives in the Danube Basin with hydropower production. Do you think that these guidelines, the existence of these guidelines, will ease the process of agreement at basin level, or how do you see the real implementation of the guidelines?
Yeah. Well, the application of the guiding principle is currently ongoing. What we are doing is having a similar approach like with inland navigation. We are organizing now yearly meetings and workshops where countries are also reporting the progress they made in the practical application. But really the core idea, the core element was to really help to get projects in the right places on track, but also the protection of other stretches where maybe the gain you can get from hydropower electricity is maybe not balancing the environmental impacts also. So what we also see is that the whole initiative was based also from communication from the countries, actually. This was not a top-down thing, but countries said, well, we are really in a difficult situation because on one hand there's a strong pressure to increase renewable energy, to increase hydropower. On the other hand, we have got existing environmental legislation in place. So how can we ensure that the legal requirements are actually met, and how can we bring this into a balance? So this document and the practical application really helps them to get these issues right, to get the right balance, to get involvement also in the national level of stakeholders, and finally to accelerate also the implementation process. We gained also from experience from other countries where we see that for some projects the discussions were stuck for 10, 15 years, and after such a strategic planning approach was applied, the problems could be solved. So this is really, we try to be as practical as possible with this document, and to gain really also from outside experience to get these things in a very practical way also on track.
Okay, thank you so much, Raimund, for your presentation. And I'm sure I'm not the only one interested in more details about the topics that were presented today. Maybe someone from the audience? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Anton. I'm here from ICLE Local Governments for Sustainability. And I would be interested to better understand the role of cities of local governments in river basin management. Obviously, your first target group is always national governments and their policies. But then, I mean, the performance of river basin management would always very much depend on what your cities, especially the big cities, are doing and how they are dealing with their open water management in the watershed. So how do you involve them and how does it work in practice?
Yes, thank you. I think the question is targeting the integration of different levels of management. When you look at our cooperation, it's based like on a pyramid system. So on the basin-wide level, the main addressees are, of course, the national governments. But on the basin-wide level, we're not dealing with every little creek and every little river. It's like on the big issues, on the major issues on the basin-wide level, and also on the major rivers and groundwater bodies and also coastal waters. So I see in this process a major role of the national representatives, because on one hand they have got the international perspective via our international working groups, but on the other hand there's more detailed planning ongoing at the national level. So on one hand we have got the basin-wide Danube River Basin Management Plan, and now also very soon adopted the first Danube Basin-wide Flood Risk Management Plan. On the other hand, you have got more detailed planning ongoing at national level. So you have got very detailed national management plan for Germany, for instance, for Hungary, for Romania. And even on the sub-basin level, then you have got even more detailed management plans. For instance, in Romania, you have got in addition 11 sub-basin management plans. And the challenge is the communication exchange between these different levels of management. I think it's not useful at all that at the international basin-wide level we're dealing with the very local issue. This is something what has to be solved at the national level, and this communication exchange has to be really ensured at the national level. So they've got a very specific role there. Not only in terms of communicating to the international level what the national issues are or the local issues are, but also bringing back home from our international meetings and working groups the basin-wide issues and to promote activities which are necessary to achieve basin-wide objectives. One example, for instance, the reduction of nutrient pollution, which is entering into the Black Sea. Some countries might already have solved at the national level and on the regional level, also on the local level, the issue of water pollution, because billions were invested in the last decades on wastewater treatment plants. However, still further efforts are needed in order to get the status of the Black Sea right. And this is an international topic where from these international working groups, this has to be communicated at home to even improve the efforts at home, although national problems or local problems might have been solved already. So it's a communication challenge, but just to mention, in December 2014 now, just very recently, we adopted the draft plans. And what is now ongoing is the public consultation phase on different levels again, at international level. So everybody, local community, can provide comments to our international plan. And this actually happened also. We get sometimes comments from very local stakeholders, from local NGOs, for instance, which send their comments to the national level, but also international level. And we make all the comments transparent, which we receive, and we address them in our expert group. So stakeholders and also local communities have the possibility to provide comments at the international level, also at the national level. And we are dealing with this in a very open and transparent way. Make those comments public and also discuss them in our expert groups with NGO representatives, stakeholder representatives, etc. They also make public then the comments will be made public in July this year on our website again. And we also, the results of the discussions on the different comments are also made public on our website to make the whole process very transparent and open.
Yeah.
Don't look convinced.
I don't hear how you involve local government. I hear that you involve local people, NGOs and so on. I'm interested in this government issue.
The governments itself, for instance, we have got federal states also in the basin, where we have got provincial governments also, and they are involved by the national processes. So it depends. For some countries, we have got national representatives and also representatives of the provincial and local governments. for federal states. This is the case for Germany, for instance, also for Austria, which are very, in a federal way, organized, and we have got quite often, it's the same at EU level. Quite often 2 representatives are going to EU meetings, and national representatives plus 1 representative from the provincial governments, for instance, communicating the results of these meetings as well.
Thank you for your question, and I'm sure Raimund now knows how important it is to involve local governments. You also had a question, please? Just, maybe this last question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Ali Zain from Foundation. Program 3. Details I could tell you about, the efforts are ongoing.
Okay, I see that the organizers hint to us that our session is over, but I just would like to thank a lot to all of our panelists who really made great presentations, and I'm sure that you can address your questions to them in the coming days during reception and free time. And just maybe in one word, I think what I most heard during this session was the word cooperation. Cooperation at really different levels, between countries, between regions, at country level, between sectors, and even between ministries, maybe at country level. So I think this is something that we can maybe take from this session, is that how cooperation is important and how we can really make it happen even more in the coming years. Thank you very much to all.
So thank you, Natalia. We will continue now with the session on security for Asia and the Pacific. There is some coffee outside, but we are not going to do the coffee break since there is no time. So if you want to grab a coffee quickly and come in,